Hey, Randy Joe here, and welcome back to Jamaican June, where throughout the month of June we are listening to different reggae albums, and today we are checking another dub album. Yesterday we listened to the first dub album I've ever experienced, that being the album Super Ape by The Upsetters, which I thought was a fantastic record, impressive for its time for sure, showing off different production techniques from one Lee Scratch Perry, and really delved into the world of dub and its sort of laid-back, smoke-induced, hypnotic mantra that it encompasses. However, today we are checking out the 1981 record, Scientist Rids the World of the Curse of the Evil Vampires by The Scientist. Now, this was actually a suggestion from one of my viewers. Nip Snaps 22 said, one album I highly recommend if you're willing to veer into the world of dub, which I am, is Scientist Rids the World of the Evil Curse of the Vampires, especially if the world of dub is something you're unfamiliar with, which again, I am. So I am excited for this one, especially seeing as the cover it is just absolutely batshit crazy. It matches the insanity of the title for sure. You've got all these horror tropes. You got the two fellas here. I believe this is going to be the scientist and maybe a producer of some sort. I'm not sure. Riding a boat, guns a-blazing, shooting up a swamp, it looks like. Ridding the evil curse of not just vampires, but it looks like we got ourselves the vampire, the mummy, ghosts, goblins, ghouls, Frankenstein. Looks like we even got a witch doctor here, which, I might have to blur that. I'm not sure. The point being, this is a incredible cover. I love this cover. I think it is just absolutely insane and matches the LP's title. That being said, this thing is pretty short. 37 minutes, 37 seconds. Interestingly enough, the exact same length of Super Ape. And 10 tracks. So, kicking things off, we've got Voodoo Curse. I am interested in seeing how much horror is blended into this album, if any. So let's kick it off. I will say it is harder. Okay. It certainly has a horror sound already. I will say, typically it is harder to react and give insight into dub, seeing how laid back and kind of minimal it seems. Well, at the same time, it's not minimal. Production's very dense. Oh. Well, this is really unpredictable. Really heavy kind of reverb effects. Certainly feels kind of sci-fi induced in a way too. This one's very minimal. Sparse arrangements overall. Not sure how I feel about it. It does have a nice groove, but the way it cuts in and out. It's an interesting choice to say the least. I do like the percussion here. That kind of high pitch hi-hat, it sounds like. Certainly has a horror-esque sound, a little twisted in its sound. Interesting opener, very minimal, very sparse, but a nice groove. I'll say that. A little. I wish there was more to it, I should say, though. Dance of the Vampires. Let's just continue. I like this beep. I wonder if this beep will be a repeating. It's literally repeating here. Okay. Ooh. Ooh, we got ourselves some vocals. You Are No Ghoul certainly got that horror tone sound to it. I like this one a lot more. Much more dense arrangement here. That kind of like rattly woodpecker effect there. Everything's so psychedelic and washed out. Certainly more twisted sound than Super Ape too. I really like that horn section there. Oh, I thought it was gonna loop. But a nice warm sound. Very clear up against this washed out backdrop. Let's continue. Dance of the Vampires, definitely more dense, more interesting than the opener. And here's blood on his lips. I like all the titles having the horrorcore elements as well. This one's like a zombie track. Interesting here, you can see the original work that he's twisted here. Blood on His Lips. Love in My Heart by Wayne Jarrett. The bass guitar has been pretty strong so far throughout. Obviously, I feel like a staple of dub is like a thick bass. We got Errol Flabba Holt on bass here. I wish I knew what this effect was. Kind of sounds like worm grunting. For all my fishermen out there. Oh. Really like that melody there, that rhythm coming in before it cuts away. Oh, I wish it kept going. I might like this one the most though so far. I think this one, you know, Dance of the Vampires had that nice saxophone too in the back end. But this one certainly gives a lot to chew on. Okay. Much more dense arrangement on that one. Teases a lot of ideas as well without fully exploring them, which I kind of wish they went a little further with some of the rhythms that it kind of interpolates there. A very nice, groovy, laid-back track, like I've come to expect from dub, but a quite solid one at that. You know, some nice deviations there. Cry of the Werewolf is this one. Not too much to say about this one. More minimal. Not as interesting. You know, you kind of get the idea of it in the first minute and a half or so. I do like these vocals. Kind of add some deviation, but nothing of note to say there. Kind of lackluster with those vocals in the end. Not much to say about that one. Pretty lackluster overall. I was kind of hoping for more with the horror elements of this. Like, I guess horror samples is what I was hoping for. This feels like some standard dub. I feel like after listening to Super Ape, I expected more complexities with this one, but maybe that's a fault of my own. I'll give it more time to grow. The Mummy Shroud, though. Let's continue. You know what? No, this is a nice opening too, with these horns. And one of those bird effects too. Certainly creating an atmosphere. This one feels very spacey. The mixing on the album. Well, let's pause this for a second. Looking into this album before I checked it out, one thing to note is that there's a lot of discrepancies between where the credit of the album goes. It's originally credited to, of course, the scientist, who is the mixer of the album, the guy handling the mixing here. However, he is not the main producer and the guy doing the arrangements, which is Henry Junjo Laws. And reissues in the last decade or so often put Junjo's album. It will say like, Junjo's rids the world of the evil curse, which, despite being paid a royalty on all these recordings he made for Henry Junjo Laws, scientists sued Green Slaves Records unsuccessfully in a U.S. court. In the end, the court ruled that Junjo's is the main artist behind this one, because he produced and arranged it, where the mix was done by a scientist. So that kind of creates a discrepancy because, if Junjo is the main producer and arranger, one would think he is the artist behind it. Well, at the same time, Scientist was the original credited one upon release, and he was the one to do the mixing, which the mixing is pretty strong throughout this album. The clarity in some of it, while some of it kind of phases in and out, the kind of careful consideration in the mix certainly stands out so far for me. But Junjo does have some interesting production techniques as well as some interesting arrangements. I guess what I'm saying is they really should have agreed before releasing it to make this a joint effort. If it was Scientist and Junjo rid the world of the evil curses, would have been a better, I feel like, outcome to the whole thing. Meet each other halfway. Instead, they fought over overall credits. Seems like it led to more issues than it's worth, in my opinion. Continuing, though. I love the very beach sound to this one. I feel like we're, sitting on a hot beach, maybe floating on a pool floaty. The mixing, however, like I said, is pretty phenomenal here. Each instrument kind of having its own subset of sound, it feels like. I really like that rhythm of the saxophone there. Kind of zoned out to it there. I love the way the saxophone sort of kind of phased in heavily there with its clarity. Man, this one's getting hypnotic. I kind of zone out on occasion with this one. Before I know it, a whole new subsection of sound phases in, especially there in the right canal, and then it just fades away again. I think I'm understanding that the sort of goal with this album is like moments of sort of like these moments of like packed arrangements that kind of come in and out of the mix. It kind of teases you. See? And then that's gone. Just like that. Like 5 seconds. Let's give that a pause or a like. I like that track a lot. I kind of... Okay. I feel like I'm taking for granted what this album is going for, because at first I was like, a little minimal. Wasn't too happy with how it didn't really dive into things too much. But it seems like the main goal and ethos of this record seems to be teasing you with like nuggets of instrumentals kind of padded out in these hypnotic states. And when those parts happen, it kind of like sucks you back in and then phases you out. I know that feels silly, but that element is certainly what's gaining some sort of traction with me. Here's The Corpse Rises. I will say each one has a pretty distinct rhythm and bass line as well, so it's not like it's all blending together either. That was a weird one. Very sci-fi heavy as well, this one. With its kind of bleeps and bloops, as one might say. I feel like we're warbling into a spaceship. Wow. The the production on this one, the mixing on this one, it's phenomenal. How does he get this effect? It's like thick, girthy sound that's... It feels like it's in my mind right now. I take back any negative thing I've said so far. Because this track, this bass line is insane. The effect on it, it is so drenched in like a psychedelic warmth. This might be my favorite track so far. One of my favorite tracks so far. Just from a production standpoint. Really just good grooves and a great sense of control in the mix. That one was phenomenal. It kind of just blew my mind there. Impressive. This came out in 81. Super Ape was, I think, 76. About 5-year difference there. Impressive how both records... Yeah, I'm going to speak on both here because both dub. Play with techniques, production-wise, that feel so ahead of their time. I feel like some of the sample work, as well as some of the sort of twisted production with the reverb or the effects kind of interspersed on the bass line there. It feels like that kind of stuff wasn't really in the mainstream, at least, until like the 90s, until hip-hop took full effect. I feel like that really pushed things too. But a lot of this is very, very ahead of its time. Maybe a little basic, maybe not as complex as it's come to be, but crazy to see some of the seeds. Here's Night of the Living Dead. Unrecognizable high-pitched sounds. All right. What's that beep again? I wish it was better utilized throughout the album. But it does add a somewhat steady cohesion. Hypnotic is really the key word I'm taking away from this album. Slow paced. Not sure what to say about that one. It gets the job done. It's hypnotic. Your Teeth in My Neck. Let's just keep going here. This is the biggest one. 4.1 million streams. Also the biggest track by far from Scientist here. Seems like we've got a much more dense vocal performance here. Not sure if this one's my favorite. I'm surprised at the amount of streams this one has. It's pretty lackluster so far, if I'm being honest with you. I feel like The Corpse Rises was far more interesting, production-wise. Maybe because there's a stronger vocal arrangement on this is what sticks out to people more. I'm assuming that's the case. Which I do like. Yeah, I don't know. That one's just okay. Maybe a hot take. I wanted more from it considering how many streams it has. A cappella?
Because he can surely turn the tide.
Not sure who's singing here.
He can push the tempest by.
Johnny Osborne, it seems, would be the singer here. A nice voice. Oh. Oh yeah, this is Plague of the Zombies. I guess I should have said the title. You hear the sort of like abrupt cutoff too. Certainly a production choice. Like you can tell in the mix, they just snipped the part off abruptly. Kind of adds to the element. Oof. It certainly has like a weird, twisted, almost paranormal sound to this record. Because some of it's just eerie with the start and stops and such. Has like a haunted sound, I should say.
Is that we give each other love.
That reverb on that love. Feel like we're floating away there. Okay. Again, I think that one, production-wise at least, was a bit more varied than Your Teeth in My Neck, but I don't know. Here's Ghost of Frankenstein. The final track. Oh, I like that piano there in the background. Not too much to say on this one. Kind of more of the same. How I'm feeling on a lot of this. Okay. So that's going to close out the record here. So let's wrap it up. Let's talk about it. I'm conflicted. It's a dub record, and I think to keep in mind with dub records is they're not meant to be, listened to in the same way that you might sit and listen to, maybe like a serious jazz record, or the way you might sit and listen to a serious rock record with all its, specific moments of interest. They're meant to be played in a way where you are laid back, most likely a little intoxicated with a drug, perhaps, maybe a little bit of booze. There's certainly that kind of element, I feel like, to dub that is not necessarily required, but is certainly complementary to one another. And I myself right now am, of course, sober. So listening to this, taking it in, sitting here, trying to be serious and critical of it, is kind of a little, I want to say counterintuitive, kind of counteractive, does not really make sense. However, it is a first listen, and I do want to observe it as such. And that being said, I will say there are certainly some elements I like. Production-wise, mixing-wise, this thing is fantastic. There are some incredible tracks here, some really interesting production techniques, especially all the way back in 81. The Corpse Rises is, I think, the best track here, showcasing just how complex the rhythms and varied production can be on this thing. It surrounds you with that bass line while certain elements are kind of further in the mix there. It really has a hypnotic sound. Mind-blowing as well. I mean, when I was listening to it, really knocking me off my feet there. That being said, the fault of this record is that I do think, given the very little sense of vocals throughout this thing, as well as, it being a fairly continuous dub sound with its kind of laid-back bass lines, you get the gist of it pretty quick. It's not something that is incredibly varied, even though I do think the bass lines and the rhythms do sound different from one another for the most part. It's not like there's too much to chew on with this thing, I guess is my main point. It's really for those who are interested in dub, interested in a nice laid-back record, and interested in very ahead of its time production from Scientist here. And Junjo, who I feel like also deserves a shout out a little bit here. I wish it went further with the horror sound. I was kind of hoping some sort of like twisted VHS sounding horror samples in here would be kind of interspersed, but it wasn't, and that's okay. Maybe I'm expecting too much for a record as early as this in a way. But still, this thing is, at the very least, an interesting listen. And I am glad I listened to it, because dub is something I have not ventured into too much. And with this, it's Super Ape. I feel like I got a pretty decent idea. I got a pretty good starter into the genre. I won't go further with it with the series here, because there are obviously a ton of reggae records that are also worth checking out, and I don't want to spend too much time on dub. But I did want to delve into it a little bit, and with these last two videos, we certainly did. I guess I'm not going to give a rating. I never give a rating on first reactions. Not anymore, at least. And really, at the end of the day, my main takeaway with this album is that if you go into it knowing what to expect, and you go into it with an open mind, perhaps with a little drink in hand, a little blunt in the fingertips, you will enjoy this thing. But if you're trying to listen to it as a serious piece, like I am here, it does make it difficult. So take that with what you will. And if you have any more reggae albums you want to suggest, go ahead and leave them down below in the comments section. I have a few written down that I do want to check out, so we'll see what I can get to. But as always, you can subscribe if you like the video. You can like the video. You can leave a sweet loving comment or a hateful comment. Say what you want, I got thick skin nowadays. My name is Randy Joe, and as always, I'm signing off.